conversation. Because we thought we would be to it last week, didn't we?
Well, so we knew, I don't know what we knew or what we
We
thought.
didn't know shit.
We
We
didn't know
never
anything.
know shit.
Right. So,
Good
so
morning.
today, good morning. Good morning. I've got my coffee. I've got my,
Which mug are you rolling? Oh, no.
can you read it? Is it backwards?
It is. No drama. Got it. No drama, lava. I love it. I'm rolling with a dinosaur.
Mm.
My daughter would tell me what kind it is. I don't know.
Mm. I just want to say that I never really paid enough attention to this mug to realize, but I get to see the no drama because I'm right-handed, right? So this is apparently a right-handed mug. I get to see the no drama and the llama every time I go to take a sip of coffee.
That
just to remind myself.
It's just a subtle.
It's not for you.
It's just a
for
subtle
you. You see this, right?
Right. I don't even know about the drama within you that you are keeping still.
Or you don't even know that I don't care about your drama. For all you know, I'm here with it, sipping a cup of coffee and paying close attention.
That's right.
But the truth is,
no drama mama.
This is my favorite.
For a minute, I thought it said no dharma, and I was like, whoa.
Whoa, that's heavy.
Whoa.
That's some heavy stuff, man. What are we doing?
I know. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's that would be an intense coffee mug if it was like no dharma.
Yeah, so it's not even my coffee mug, it's Karen's, but I was struggling to find a clean giant mug for myself today. So here we are. So today
games.
Well, yeah, games. So
last
where did we I had some thoughts about where we ended up last week that I wasn't sure that we'd covered or that I wanted to maybe mention. But maybe we kind of covered it, right? Like maybe we're done with the idea of deep and mindful practice. Oh, well, so there was I sent you that page of text from one of the books that I'm reading, right? Do you remember?
Yes.
So this was the study, the sort of some psychology professor out in East Coast, like New York or something like that, did like a study where the premise of the study was they're going to take a group of people whom they had no background on, except that they were all they all practiced a particular art, right? Mm-hmm. And so in this case, the case of the study was like volleyball, right? And so, but like they had, I don't know, I think when they developed this study, they were doing it in the context of ballerina. I don't remember there was some kind of reference to ballerinas or something. I don't remember, like talking about pliés. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is, so they say, okay, all right, this is what we're going to do. So we're going to take a group of practitioners and we're going to have no context on the level of proficiency or competency that they have within the domain of volleyball. And we're going to ask them to describe the way that they practice their serve. Right? Yes. That's what I sent you, right? You read this?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. I did read it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it's sent you the right page. Okay. So they were able to predict how well the students would perform. So then afterwards, I think they just did like a performance evaluation, so that they didn't even like go and say like, so where are these people in their performance? They did like a double blind type experiment where they evaluate, like they did a performance assessment, and they were able to predict with a 90% accuracy how well the practitioners would perform at this particular skill. based on the way that those practitioners describe their practice. And not and so and when and I don't mean their practice in terms of the body of the domain. I mean like the way that they would train and develop their competency within this particular dimension. So like the circle,
Yeah.
right? So what does that mean? That means that this admittedly, not like potentially,
One-off study,
yeah,
whatever.
was what, right, whatever. The conclusion that you might come to is that it can be said to be generally true that if you know what you're talking about, that you perform better.
Right. Right. And I mean this for our listeners that have been around, like this goes back to like our chat about scrubs, right? And scrubs being somebody that's just throwing shit out and praying it works, right? Spray and pray.
Right.
And like sometimes it does.
A lot of times it does, because there's a lot of aspects of your practice that you can come in having already developed, right? Or that you can come in having already, you can come in particularly advantaged for whatever reason, whether or not because you're like, I mean, you can say you've developed or have a like physical competence, whatever, like your height, right, might make it successful for you or whatever. But
Right.
I don't know. I don't think that there's a difference between like what you developed accidentally through your childhood and
Right.
what you were born with, right? Like that's not the point. The point is you can come in not knowing how you ended up with the skills that you do, that you have, and say, well, I'm just good, right? I just get it. And so that's great. And so I'm going to continue. I know better because I'm so good. And so, and that'll get you far. And, in a domain in a domain where there's not a lot of, like, the way that we measure success is so chaotic, right? If the, well, I mean, regardless of whether or not you measure it in competitive success in tournaments or whatever, like the way that we measure success is so radically chaotic that, that might actually get you as far as you ever need to go.
Right. That was it.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before, but like, I'll never forget like my judo instructor teaching about like stiff arming somebody. And he was like, this is idiotic. Don't do this. This is what you do to somebody who did this to you. Right. And then he would be, and we would all learn how like to deal with somebody stiff arming. And then he would be like, so why is somebody stiff arming? I just told you it was idiotic. Why are they doing it? And if you'd been around long enough, you knew his answer was because that person had success with it. That's why they're doing it. It's not because it actually is idiotic. It's because it got them what they wanted.
Yeah, and you might even say that the general meta really hasn't figured out how easily dealt with this thing is.
Right. Until it is, and in judo at least, at a relatively low level, you learn how to deal with that. Right. You aren't going to have success very long. In judo. But maybe in a less developed art, you would have success for a very long time.
Right. So this is going to segue us into games. So last week we spent a lot of time talking about mindful, deep practice, analytical practice, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to conceptualize what is happening, what the part of what you're doing, where that needs to be polished, right? Developed.
Yeah.
How you take the entirety of a concept and take it through a system of steps to bring it from something that you have to intellectualize into something that you can embody, right? Mm-hmm. And how even in terms of KDF, they accounted for that process, right? Like, so it would be my contention that the whole program of taking something from this sort of abstract intellectualization into embodiment is why they organize the concepts the way they do, and all the way up to fuel and indes, right? So like fuel and indes for me is the tradition telling us like it's not good enough to know these things. You have to learn to embody them, right? You have to learn to perform without thinking. But that doesn't, you don't just do it. You don't just sit, like, you have to learn first and perform with thinking. And then you go through that process of gradually enhancing your capacity to perform it until you can just embody it. Right?
Right. And I mean, this is totally a sideways, but like as you were speaking, it reminded me of my writing lesson yesterday. I was trotting around with my horse, and my coach, she was doing something. She had her back turned, and she turned around and looked, and then she said, "How did that trot feel?" And I said, "It was a little rough, but it wasn't terrible." And she said, "Well, I asked because it sounded rough. It sounded like the horse was trotting terribly. But then I turned around, and you guys were moving as one unit. And I thought it must not be as bad as it looks. So I wanted to know, or as bad as it sounds, because I wanted to know, right? And she went on to say a high compliment to me that I was developing what they call a following seat. And she said, "Now don't misunderstand me. Following doesn't mean actually following her, because if you followed her, you'd be behind time."
Right.
So it means being with her, even though she's the driver of the action. And so, like, segueing back, that is what you're talking about with fuel and an index, and thinking and not thinking. You can't. There's no time in a sword exchange to be like, hold on, that looks, feels, smells like a Zornhau. Now in Danzig on page, right? Like it's just, you can't do that.
Right. And yet they do teach it to you that way. Right.
And yet they teach it to you that way. Why? Yeah.
And so we say, okay, so mindful practice gets us closer to being able to do that. And there are ways that you can drill the entire time, right? That you can be led in your drill by a coach who is providing very discrete sets of stimuli that you understand, right? That's not the chaos of randomness, right?
Right. The fire hose of shit. Yeah.
The fire hose of shit that I'm not good at. It's a small set of things that at a minimum I know what I'm supposed to do to deal with. And I'm not there if I haven't demonstrated that. Right? And if I can't say, that's the other thing too, like demonstrating that you can do it is not good enough. Right? It's demonstrating that you understand it. Right? Because if you say, all right, do it, and they do it, and it's perfect, and they say, okay, do it again, and they fuck it up, and you say, okay, where did you mess that up? And they're like, well, then you're like, okay, we're going back, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't make use out of this environment unless you have a deep understanding of every step. And then, okay, so that's the best. Go ahead.
Yeah, but these things are not two sides of a coin, but like these things are, it is a symbiotic relationship between your mental framework to be able to understand a thing and your body's ability to embody it. And that symbiosis, it's like each one is gonna pull the other one higher or lower, right? it doesn't matter, but they go in tandem. They go in tandem.
Yes. Yeah. So like it's funny. You take someone who has a lot of success, right? And you say, all right, let's slow this down. Like you're doing great. You're excellent at what you're doing. Let's slow it down. And then you say, try it, perform it this way. And then they can't. And you're like, why didn't so let's say I said move your left foot first, right?
Yeah.
And then they do the thing and they do it or whatever and it works or lands or whatever. But then it's like, but you didn't move your left foot first, right? Now, if you say, I'm choosing not to move my left foot first because it doesn't work for me. I don't need it. It's not gonna improve my fencing, right? I would still have an argument with that, but we can take that, for what it is. But it's like if you're trying and you can't do it, then that's something that even if you think this is bad, you should be saying to yourself, like, I'm only going to get better by being able to do this.
Right. I'm going to try.
Right. Like I'm only going to, if I teach myself to be able to distinguish between my right foot and my left foot, then I'm better at distinguishing between my left. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was drilling today and trying some new things, and I was experiencing that, right? Like my pathway to Durchwechseln's real strong, and I just wanted to do that, and I wanted to not do what I was trying to do, and I was like, oh,
right.
Why?
Right. Why? But also, you still do it. You work through it. You say, okay, I'm only good. This is fine. This is fine for me to be.
I slowed it down until I wasn't. Yeah, I just slowed down what we were doing until I wasn't following my routine. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, here's the thing. Oh, there's the feel for the thing. Oh, I see the thing. And then it was, I wasn't Durchwechseling anymore.
Right. Right. So it's yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about the environment, the game environment, and what it provides. Right.
So much.
It does provide an amazing amount. So what would be your thoughts on the first, the broadest brushstroke? What the difference between mindful practice and well, we might even say you could mindfully play a game. In fact, you probably should mindfully play a game.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, what is the difference? Well, okay, so I think what's interesting is that theoretically, the game environment pulls you intentionally out of interoception and being inwardly focused on your sensations and puts you outward into the world. Right? And puts you into just external instead of internal, right? And so what I'm thinking about is, I was reading an article that was kind of breaking down the ecological framework of sports training, right? Meaning that the athlete is in an environment. It is in an ecology of the game in which the athlete is performing, right? That's what it's trying to talk about. And so, but what it was saying was an advantage to a game is that you write a story about what you're doing, and that the story is the helpful thing for driving the body motion that you want. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Right? So, there's no story in yoga, for instance. Right? I mean, that might not be true. I'm not that deep of a yogi, but,
sure, but yeah.
Maybe there is. I don't fucking know. But at the level I'm practicing it, there isn't. It's, someone, the person leading a yoga class might say something like, you're in like a lunge position, and they will say, roll your right thigh to the outside. Try to roll your muscle to the outside of your leg. You'd be like, oh, good. That's very interoception, right? I'm just thinking about me and my muscle and what I'm doing with it. And there's nothing on the outside. I'm getting no external input about that.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the game example they gave in that particular article was trying to work on accessory muscles for long jumpers. And they were saying, so what you're going to do then is you're going to set up a floor is lava game. And make them jump from thing to thing to thing to thing around the room, right? And the fact that the floor is lava, and they're thinking about the fact that the floor is lava, they are not inside their body thinking about their accessory muscles, right? And their accessory muscles are going to do what they need to do to achieve the goal of not being in lava.
Right. So I think so that is a great direction to go initially, if we think, right, it's the nature of the way that we perform as humans functionally, that we do most of the things that we're doing subconsciously. Right. So like we create a story in our head about what we're looking to achieve, and then we direct our body to achieve that, but sort of in a way that doesn't isolate for all of the various components that, right? We don't think about all of those things. We look at the task as a whole, and then and what ends up happening is we might be able to utilize, if we're thinking very, if we're thinking about all of the various ways that we can isolate the subordinate components of the actions that we're trying to perform, right? There's a sense in which we can lose the forest for the trees. So what we might end up, right? What we might end up with is a highly developed particular thing that we're isolating, and then like not move our feet or whatever it is, right?
Yes. Right? Or become obsessed about it in the idea that there are rules to how this is supposed to go. This movement has to go hand then foot always, no matter what, because we're fencing, and that's a fucking rule, period, amen. You can never break it.
Right.
And then you go, but like sometimes you actually need to. Sometimes you can't achieve your goal without breaking that rule, because there aren't really rules in that way,
Right. So another thing the way that I sort of think about games. So we're putting a pin in that. That's going to be like one branch of this discussion, right? Or like one benefit of the game above a drill, or that kind of thing. The other thing that I turn to is what you do with games, right? So what do you do with games?
Oh, I don't know. You go.
Well, you do know. Like when you're about to do a game, what are you about to do? You're about to play.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
I didn't know where you're going, man.
I get it. Right. So we play games. Right. So that brings us back to 2 years of discussion on what it is that play is. And I sent you that clip where a relatively famous comic was talking about play. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. Right. And it's like you have to recognize that failure is part of the deal. Right.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's trite's my word for today. It's trite to say that failure is where you learn, but it is, right?
It is. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You learn nothing. At a minimum, you just do what you already knew,
Right.
right? If you don't fail, then at a minimum, you're just doing what you already understood, right?
Yes. You didn't try something you didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Um, and so like,
But play is a place where you have enough social structure that failure doesn't mean shame
right.
or injury or death, right?
Right.
Failure just oh well, I tried that. Whoop,
Yeah, it's like,
you know.
okay, got it. That doesn't work, right? Like, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful. So what a game can be is an opportunity for someone to try things at all sorts of levels of consciousness, right? So like,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be being super analytical about everything that we're trying, right?
No. It
It
shouldn't
can
be actually. Because being analytical is hard to be playful.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So there's and there are two things that we can think about in regards to this idea of using games for play. So one of the things that we get from it is we get an exceedingly low consequence environment to
Yeah.
experience the phenomena of the domain,
Right.
right? Like, I've never done this before, right?
Right.
Okay, here's a sword, let's play a game, right?
Yeah.
And you do whatever you want. There's no, you're not going to have to do push-ups if you move your foot first or whatever, right? Like,
Right. Not
um
playful.
right, exactly. um and see, and maybe at the level for like a noob, they play the game, they're starting to learn what works or what doesn't work, but maybe at the lowest level they're not even doing that, but what they're getting is like, okay, this is what this looks like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I started here, I was deathly afraid. In fact, so here's something. Yesterday I played a game with some students. They were having trouble getting the structure of a parry right.
Sure.
um, we only ever use steel swords. uh, People are very careful with each other,
Yeah.
right?
Rightfully so.
Because that's how you do this thing that we do safely. um, but I ended up getting the foam swords from Purple Heart, which are my favorite things in the world.
So much fun.
And so we're doing rapier, and it's the structure of a rapier parry, like a shortage parry on the outside. And I was like, I went and grabbed the foam longswords. I was like, here, take this sword. They've never held a longsword before, right?
Right.
Like, take this sword. I'm gonna try and hit your shoulder, right? Just block me, right?
Right.
Like, be strong on my sword on the inside. I'm going to attack your shoulder, your outside shoulder. Just keep me from doing that, right?
Yeah.
And then I did it once, very, very gently, right? And then I gradually ramped up intensity until they were like, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm about to die. You're like coming at me with the force of 1,000 suns." And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but it's okay,
But you're not
right?
dying.
You're not dying, right? You're actually defending this, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
hitting you fast and hard, and you're defending it, and it's safe because they're foam. But
Right.
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is like, and the other thing that you're getting is like, okay, in order for a parry to work, it has to be like this.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So just acquainting yourself with the environment, like, this is what it feels like for someone to look like they're going to kill me, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
dead, and so I'm like, no, I can start to figure this out. But then also the second part of it is the discovery, the analytical discovery, right?
Mm.
Let me try this. That didn't work. Let me try
Mhm.
this. Oh, that was better, right? Um, and so that's sort of where my head is at when it comes to games.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this might help us a little bit. So, at my library book sale a couple of years ago, I got this book. It was printed in 1920. It is games for the playground, homeschool, and gymnasium. And it's thick. There's a lot of kick-ass games in here.
This is the American one, right? It's an American book.
It is an American book, yeah. It was printed in New York. And in the introduction, it goes into the uses of games in 1920. And so the very first thing that they suggest, sorry, I'm old now, people, and I don't have my reading glasses. Oh, wait, I do. Hold on. Yeah, full librarian, everyone. For those of you that are listening and can't see, I have the chain and everything. Okay, now I can actually see this thing. I know, full librarian.
I love it.
I don't even care. I love it. So the first is to develop sense perceptions, right? It seems obvious, but that is absolutely what they're saying. And so they say sense perceptions are quickened. A player comes to see more quickly that the ball is coming towards him, that he's in danger of being tagged, that it is his turn, that he hears the footsteps behind him, that his name or number has been called, he feels the touch on his shoulder, or in other innumerable ways is aroused to quick and direct recognition of and response to the things going on around him, right? And so, like, whatever it is you're supposed to be paying attention to, they're suggesting that the game is heightening your ability to perceive that thing.
Right.
Through
I
that
think that's
nature.
Right. For sure. That's exactly, yeah. Now, what it doesn't say in there is that, learning how to deal with it better, right?
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Keep talking.
Well, yeah. So, just if we think about mindful drilling, right? Like the methodical development of an ability or a skill, the proficiency.
Yeah.
You sort of use the game to isolate those areas to target, right?
Yes.
So what the game seems to focus on is the environment that Fuelin and Indes, right? Where that thrives.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Right. And I'm thinking about, James, your game. You took from horses, right?
I did. Yes.
Yes. So
did
will
we talk
you
about
describe
that? Yeah, we didn't talk about that on the podcast, I guess.
Did we?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Okay, so there's a game, I call it the horsemanship drill, or the horsemanship game. And I took it from horsemanship in the sense that when you're sitting on a horse in natural horsemanship, like I don't know how.
Yeah.
I can't speak to, and also natural horsemanship is sort of a much bigger category.
It is. There are many schools of that too. I have come to learn.
In the tradition of horsemanship that I have limited exposure to.
There we are.
All right. When you're sitting on a horse, if you're sitting like this, which I don't know if you can really see, but
square.
I have, but no pelvic tilt.
Sure.
Or no, is it posterior, anterior? Which one's the?
Either one.
Sure.
But
I'm sitting right. The horse is not going to move. The horse is getting a cue. This is where, like, I'm relaxed. It's time for the horse to be relaxed, and the horse just knows that, right?
Right.
And the moment that I bring my pelvis forward, right, and I lift my shoulders back, the horse is, okay, it's time to move.
We're gonna do something. Yeah, let's get prepared.
And so it's just this. Well, so in the school of horsemanship that I was again have limited exposure to, this is enough to get the horse walking.
Sure.
Right. So you're here and you just do this, and the horse starts walking.
Yeah.
And it depends on what kind of horse you got. If you have a Dodge Ram van from 1980s, then the horse might lift up its right foot. Right. If you have a Ferrari and you do this, you might start walking, right? Like
Yeah.
you might, or even it might even say like, okay, are we trotting? Is that what we're doing now?
Are we doing the thing? Yeah.
So and so you learn very quickly. It's just like driving, right? You could call it the horsemanship drill, or you could call it the throttle drill, right?
Yes.
So it's the bottom line is this can be enough pressure to get going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So and then you have to know like, okay, I need to move my horse 5 feet. What's enough? What's something that I can make manageable, right? So the game is simple. In swordsmanship, if you feel pressure directed towards the strung of your blade, you should thrust the person in the face. That's just how you should move forward into that pressure. If someone's pressing on the strong, you should move forward into that pressure because they're using their weak against your strong and they're structurally unsupported to be able to displace your sword. And so that's a moment in which you can work indes to use feeling to feel the pressure and work indes to strike them in the face.
Sure.
Right? So if you feel pressure towards the strong of your blade, then you should go forward, right?
Yep.
So the horsemanship drill is you have a person, it begins as a drill. So the coach will apply pressure to the strong of the blade. And as soon as you feel that pressure, you begin to move forward, right?
Right.
And depending on how much pressure they give, how much throttle they give, how much pelvic tilt they give, right?
Yep.
You move forward faster.
Right.
Right?
That's that.
That's the drill. It becomes a game when both parties start getting kind of good at that.
Yeah.
Right? Because what you can do is you can, as the coach, you can have it in your mind like, okay, what I need to do, and it doesn't have to, games don't have to be competitive, by the way, just so that we know, right? You could have a training partner, they're doing a thing, you're playing a game that has nothing to do with their interaction with you. Right? They're just an external feature of the game for you. And so that's what this is, right? So what the coach is trying to do is they're trying to lead them just some certain distance that they decide in their head. Like, okay, I want them to step 3 feet or whatever. And so what does 3 feet of pressure look like? Right?
Right.
And then the other person on the other side of the game is not thinking like, oh, I have to only move 2 feet because I don't want them to get right. They're not telling each other like what their own conditions are. They're just trying to use the drill as a way to play a game with themselves, right?
Right.
And so I guess the bottom line is, like using that frame of reference, like, okay, I feel the pressure, I'm supposed to go, right?
Yeah.
How do I do that? How do I do that effectively? How can I quiet my brain to be able to feel that pressure? How can I focus, right? And that's sort of what you were talking about, or what the book was saying, right? It's like, because I'm focused on the conditions of this game, the game is like, I feel the pressure, I go, right? And I'm constantly getting a little bit of those signals, and I'm trying to figure out how much is too much, right?
Yeah. Right. And you're not thinking about you're not thinking about necessarily the exact angle of how you're holding your hand, because you can't do that and listen to the feeling, right?
Or what kind of steps you're taking.
Yeah, it's just whatever happens, I mean, Lord knows I've been watching videos of myself lately, and I'm like, my God, I take a lot of little bitty shuffling steps that I didn't even know I do. And then I watched it more to figure out why am I doing it? Why do I not even know I'm doing it? And I'm emphasizing my winding movements with my right hand with a foot, like a little drop step sort of thing. So it isn't even a shuffling step. It's that I'm body, right? And then I was like, oh, do I love that or hate that? I don't know. I don't fucking know. But my point is, if I didn't have video,
right,
I wouldn't have even known that was occurring. Right? Because I was focused on, I am going to wind this sword and hit my training partner in the face, because that was the game we were playing.
Yeah.
Was winding, counter winding.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to find that moment. And then I did, right? But whatever, that's the game. So focus is on the outside, right?
Right.
Not on the inside. And then it's heightening your feeling because you're so intense on the goal.
Outwardly, yeah, you're so outwardly directed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So I think that's incredible. So sense perceptions are quickened. Social development is the next thing it says about games,
Ooh, nice.
right? And I maybe this resonates with some of us. Many children, whether because of lonely conditions at home or through some personal peculiarity, do not possess the power readily and pleasantly to cooperate with others.
Hmm. That's really funny.
All right. Okay. The author has known case after case of peculiar, unsocial, even disliked children who have come into new power of cooperation and have become popular with their playmates through the influence of games.
The prose here is magnificent.
It's 1920, man. They knew how to like throw some shade. So yeah,
so
and
let's
then it
stop
goes
there.
on
Wait,
to
so let's
say
stop there.
it goes
So
on to say a shy kid becomes extroverted, and extrovert who's too intense becomes more it creates moderation in these children.
So outwardly
Socially.
directed, right? So
Outwardly
directed, right? So ego, right, begins to take a back seat when ego is not beneficial to the advancement of the story.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, and that's just it, because the thing that's interesting is a lot of people that I've seen in discussions online and talked to, the moment you mention game, they're like, but then there's a winner and a loser. And you already alluded to this. Not all games are competitive in that way. Right?
right.
And clearly, since this is saying the development of the cooperative urge is what games bring to children, right?
Right.
And I think that is so. Then that goes to say even a game where there is a winner is cooperative on some level, because we've all agreed to these conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a game. All right. Okay. Shoot. I had a thought as you were saying, and now I lost.
Oh no.
No, it's okay. So not all games. Yeah. So not all games are competitive, right? So what is the essential features of the game, right? The essential feature of a game is not that there are two sides and they're fighting each other, right? That's not what a game is.
Right.
So what is a game, right? So what a game seems to me to be is where there are uncontrolled variables.
Yes.
That you're trying to discover, to either you're trying to understand those variables better, to like begin to attain some kind of fluency of, or within, and you're trying to discover how your behavior interacts with those variables. So that could be another person that's actively working against you, or another team actively working against you, or it could be anything, right? You can play a game,
Right. But games have to have a set of discrete rules we all agreed upon that control the situation so that the variables that you're playing with are within reason. Like, you can't play duck, duck, goose if nobody gets up when they're tapped.
Right. Or yeah.
The game is just, it's no good.
So
right?
you say we the game, what the game does, right, by having constraints on it, right? So to reference the sort of the proponents of the CLA, the constraint-led approach. what the constraints do is they expose you to a similar set of variables, even as they're uncontrolled, quote unquote uncontrolled, yes. Right? Is that yes. They're controlled enough to appear frequent enough for you to be able to get some sense from them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly so. Right? So again, this is why, like, you know, you and I going into our backyards with boffers and literally no rules isn't really a game. How do we even know who won? What are we even doing?
Right. I mean, we always, yes, that's funny. So it's true that there are always a set of rules at some level. Right? We always end up with it.
We have to agree to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether or not that be sort of formally and explicitly or just through practice or whatever.
I mean, my God, as a parent, you know, even imaginary play between two children, there's always one child screaming, you can't do that.
Even imaginary play between a child and the figment of their imagination.
They will tell them, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can't do that. There's a rule, right? Yeah.
Right.
And there's a school of child development that suggests that the only rule there should be on the playground is that no one can say you can't do that. So that's a fun thought, but that's neither here nor there.
Right. I think the fact is there needs that in any game there has to be regulation, right?
Yeah, I'm with
you. But so like hear me out, right? So I think the idea behind that sentiment is that the children will self-regulate, right?
Right.
And that's fine. That's a fine, like, it will teach, that environment will certainly teach them to self-regulate, right?
Right.
But there's no iron law of children behaving that says that they're going to self-regulate themselves into safety immediately, right? Did you froze, or did you freeze? You still? Oh no!
Technical.
All right, are you? So I wonder which one of us is the one who's still recording.
Wait, I don't know.
Oh, did you hear the last thing I said?
No, but I was singing a song about technical issues. So
okay. So what I said was, I wonder which one of us is still recording.
I know, right?
So I guess we'll find out. So what I was going to say is, there's no iron law that says that children raising themselves, or in this particular context of being on the playground, is going to result in a safe environment.
No.
Right. So like, yes, you should allow them to self-regulate, because it's going to be great for them. It's going to teach them how to set boundaries and make rules and do things and etc. But like, what do you like? Is there a line? Are you ever gonna? You know what I'm saying? Like, at what point do you say, like, I'm gonna step in and do something right now, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, there is a line for literally everybody, because there's no telling what's going to happen when someone is on the playground.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have sense perceptions and social development. And then their third point on the use of games is that, most important of all, however, in the training that comes through games, is the development of will. And
yes,
the development of will, they say,
so I think go ahead, finish your thought, or finish their thought.
They suggest that there is a balance within the development of will in a person between the power of initiative, the courage to give dares and to take risks, and determination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but also an inhibition, right? And that the power of restraint, of self-control, of to control yourself to not act impulsively, etc. So that they're defining will as being able to have the correct balance between volition and inhibition. Yeah.
So I can't help but draw a line between that and what you started with. Although it falls apart, so I'm not wedded to this idea. But the idea that like we're telling a story, there's a story involved here, right? And our role in the story to achieve this thing, like the will to make the thing happen, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Does that like you're trying to actualize a story that you're telling yourself about what's going on?
Yeah.
Or like you're trying to actualize your vision, the narrative that you would see like be in the world. And in order to do that, you have to do the thing. You have to go out and do the thing. So I feel like it's funny to me because they give you, it's funny to me because that's what you started with, and that's sort of how I view that. What would you say, leaving aside what I just said, how would you connect that to the discussion we had before?
Well, I think it's interesting that in their goals of the games, nowhere does it say, play for the NFL, right? Understanding that it didn't exist then, but that we have distilled in our culture PE down to like who would have talked about like your PE class being about development of willpower?
Right.
No.
Right.
We have eliminated the mind and the story and the soul, shall I throw out, from the physical aspect. And so, I think that's something a lot of people struggle with when they look to, why am I doing this martial pursuit, if I'm going to call it that, right? Why am I doing historical fencing if I'm not going to win the tournament? Because this is about development of my physical prowess until I dominate a physical field, right? Right. And so that separation has been drug into this study for many people,
Yeah. So there's like a holism that this book, the author of this book, was engaged with.
Right? Yeah.
That
I mean, and guys, like the games in here are literally like Duck Duck Goose. Like that's, I mean, there's some badass wrestling games in here, but there's also like Duck Duck Goose or game like Leapfrog. Mm-hmm. Or what is that thing, right? Where somebody bends down and you jump over them and then they jump over you?
That sounds like Leapfrog, right?
Yeah. Like that sort of playground mayhem falls under the purview of will development, right?
Right. And social development.
And social development.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I getting from this? I'm just getting, well, I mean, let's just reflect on our own practice, right? How many, I can't tell you how many people in historical fencing that I've interacted with, that I've coached, that I've fenced with or met at various events all over the world, that were made more whole by the practice. And
absolutely.
And particularly socially, right? Like, I mean, they, given community given like taught self-regulation,
Yeah.
right? Acceptance and tolerance, right? Like people who have a story that they tell about themselves that we might regard as being like, we might be less charitable to views that they held before they came to historical fencing.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the practice of historical fencing, where they realize that generally that's one thing that I think that we do exceedingly well in the practice of historical fencing as a community, is like we have a pretty great, tolerant, accepting community.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that if you come to historical fencing with views that don't reflect those values, that you have to learn pretty quickly that you have to make a decision about what's more important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we stopped there, right, then we would have enough reason to continue.
Yeah.
But anyway, so getting to
So I might suggest that like on the question of, you know, not just why games, right? And why this game, right? But you know, like many of us, I think, are seeking this kind of holistic development that includes our body, right?
Yeah.
Because the historical fencing community is, by and large, you know, not a bunch of gym rats.
Mm-hmm.
Just to put it that way. We're gonna wait for your cops to finish doing whatever they're doing.
I think it's a fire truck.
Yeah.
I hope everyone is safe.
I hope everyone is safe for sure. But yeah, why? You know, it's not a bunch of gym rats for the most part, right? There are a lot of people who are, for whatever reason, you know, trying to square up their own development in one of those three aspects that this book suggests, you know, whether it be social communion or will or physical development.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because at the end of the day, we aren't ever going to kill anybody on a duel field that began on horseback and ended me, you know, last dueling you into the fence, right? Like it's just, none of us are going to ever do that, you know? So what game are we playing, you know?
Right.
It's all a game, I think, if done well.
Right. So actually, and that's actually interesting. So we've been talking about games as a tool to use to get better at what in this case is a game, right?
Yes,
so
and I'm just making us blow this up into the bigger game. What is the bigger game now?
Right, you know? Right. So it's like there's always a game, right?
Yeah.
So there's always a game. Life is a game. Life is a game, right? The game is always going to be limited in terms of the phenomena that you're going to encounter, and you can isolate various aspects or various dimensions so that you can get more reps in terms of your experiencing of those things.
Yeah.
But so now let's talk about, so what we haven't gotten to yet is like where, so there's a question right now. The reason that we went into this, the reason that it wasn't just random, right? Like we didn't just say, you know, it'd be great for the show is to juxtapose drilling and games.
And games, yeah.
And talk about their efficacy in the practice of historical fencing or any kind of sport and or martial art and or light practice, whatever.
Right.
This is kind of taken over the zeitgeist, right?
Sure.
2 years ago, actually, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was martial versus sport. Everyone's pretty much over that, right? We certainly
I
beat
think
that
so.
to death on this show. Yeah, for the moment. We'll see. It'll make a comeback.
Oh, on our show, we're done. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway.
for sure. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I think for the moment in the zeitgeist, that's not really the question. Yeah. Right now, the question is, should we? Of course, both sides of this are constantly misrepresented, right? So I barely want to make the pronouncement, but one perspective, would be the question of, should we just drill or should we play games?
Right. There you go. Just leave it like that. We don't have to throw pejoratives anywhere. But they're out there if y'all want to go read them. They're on the internet.
Right. They're all over the internet. Everyone's got opinions.
Have a good time.
Everyone's pointing to evidence. So whatever. But I think, certainly you and I are of one mind when it comes to this.
Right.
Which is what is our one mind, Jesse?
Please do them both.
Right?
Please have moderation, which is all the old guys in the books were always constantly fucking harping on.
Right.
Use a little bit of feeling. Yeah. Sense the room. If you only have one student show up for class and he shows up crying because his dad fell last night and broke both hips and is in the hospital, are you going to be like, you know what we should do, man? We should play Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Right.
Or maybe you should. I don't know. But the point is,
right.
Read the room. Yeah.
So, but in terms of like our own, if we say, if we're trying to become the best, if we're gonna say that we're trying, our goal here when we show up to the gym, when we show up to the training hall, is I'm here to become the best fencer I can be. Right.
Great.
Then do I drill or play games?
Sure.
And the answer, I know what my answer is.
My answer is always both, right?
The answer is definitely always both. But then what I would say is, what do you use them for? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So what is our conclusion here? When we say, all right, Jesse, I want you to teach me how to sword play, although I live 3 states away and they're huge because we're in the Midwest. And so can you just tell me whether I should drill or play games? And if your answer is both, then what should I use each for?
Right.
The floor is yours.
And I mean, all I can do is center it back to that symbiotic relationship between internal and external focus. And that for me, drills help that internal picture of what I'm trying to create, which, as we talked about, a drill should be alive. There should be an aliveness in it, right? And that's where the feeling is coming in, and you're doing this with an intelligent partner, et cetera, right? I also personally am a big fan of like meditatively imagining in 3 dimensions. Not everybody's brain is this way, but like imagining sword drills, right? Or plays or whatever I'm working on, right? Like, what is the optimal feel for this? What is the distance? What do I see? Where is my hand? Where is my sword? Like, all that. And I'll do it like from first person and from third person. And like, there's all these techniques for this stuff, right? I didn't make this up. Read about it, but so there's all that internal work. And to me, that kind of lives in the drill land. And then game land is, let's fuck around within constraints and see what develops, because I'm going to suddenly discover my autopilots that I need to repilot, right? I need to come back into piloting mode, right? Instead of, just letting my meat body take over and run shit, right? Yeah. And again, like it is a balance of internal, external, and also a balance of like, you can only be present for so long, and that long is infant, like just tiny, Right? Realistically. You
Right.
know, anybody that's ever tried to like do that absolutely quiet mind meditation knows this, right?
Yeah.
It's just for a moment. Can you actually be there? And so being out in a game and fucking around lets you release steam and play and have fun and learn in just a completely different way. And for me, I want both of those learnings
Right.
to happen.
That's one. So we were at conclusions, but then you referenced one thing there that we could spend a little bit more time on, that last part of like, okay, mindful practice
Sure.
is it consumes a lot of bandwidth.
So much bandwidth.
Right. It consumes so much bandwidth and attention. Huh. So I've been a lot of my several of my distance learning students right now are struggling with sort of, did you watch the video? Right?
Oh, sure.
Like, it's hard to watch a video.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to fucking sit there and put it on, and it's a 40-minute video, and it's like, I don't want to, I just want to go play the game. Right?
Right.
It's definitely true that playing the game requires less in terms of discipline and wherewithal. Right? Playing a game is a good way to get practice in. Right? It's a good way to experience the environment in a way that doesn't like really tax you. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's like, it's not. I think for most people, playing the game is not taxing almost at all. Like, you could almost do it until you just have to go. Right?
Yeah.
The thing that requires discipline is the mindful practice.
Right.
And that could be mindfully playing the game too, or just mindfully drilling, mindfully improving your movement pattern under a variety of contexts. Again, when we say drilling, we do not just mean the execution of a singular movement pattern over and over and over again ad infinitum. We do not mean that, right?
I never mean that.
Right. We mean that could be one stage of development, but the moment that you demonstrate a competency, you should be moving on to the next stage of development. Full stop.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's, you were talking about imagining the drill. Watching video, watching film of yourself failing. That's, for some people, that can be the biggest challenge in the world. Like, they do not want to see them get hit.
Yes. So here's my recommendation on that. Because I do a lot of video, like, just to throw out to the world and also for my own self. And it goes like this. You do the thing, you record it, you go and you watch it. And I promise you, that first watch, you'll be like, oh my,
yeah.
Like, everything about this sucks. Jesus, I'm slow. What is my foot doing? Oh, and then I got gacked. Oh, and then shut it off and go away for 2 days.
Yeah.
And come back. And now you'll actually be able to watch it and learn from it. But you have to do your first, like, literally visceral, like, listening to yourself on a recording tape, right? Everyone knows experience.
Does it ever not get visceral for you? Like, or for anybody? I guess I'm asking, like,
I don't know.
You've been watching video of yourself for several decades at this point.
Yeah. Doing sword shit.
Doing sword shit. Have you ever gotten to a point, or are you at a point now where you can watch it and not feel like, I'm embarrassed to see this?
Well, so my pathway now begins with, fuck, I'm cool. And then it's, this is horrific. And then I'm back to fuck, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because I'm able now to at least briefly, and it's very brief, take in the parts that are beautiful
Mhm.
before I hyper focus on the parts that make me want to vomit everywhere.
Right.
And then eventually I'll be able to come back and see the beautiful parts again.
Mhm.
But it's a 2-day lag for me.
Sure. Even you after 20 years,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So,
But I don't have any emotional attachment to that reaction anymore because I just know it's coming.
right. 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 You know, so that's, I mean, that would be something else, you know, that we can look at more specifically. It's just like,
Should we do that next? How to use tape?
how to
Because you and
use
I
tape.
both use a lot of tape
Yes. Yes.
for
How to
ourselves
use
and
tape.
for distance learners. We both have distance learners.
Yeah.
I only have them in this discipline, but you have them in multiple disciplines.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
How to use tape, how to, you know, and then maybe we can begin with how to deal with the emotional reaction of being embarrassed about how the truth of your performance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the last thing I would say, and then we can get more into this next week, is the last thing I would say is you should never be afraid of witnessing the truth of your performance.
Ooh.
You should never. That's if you're unwilling to witness the truth of your performance, you are being delusional.
Well, okay, so that's what I would say. Be afraid, do it anyways.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Right. So it's not. Yeah. So you should. Yeah. You can be afraid, but you should never be unwilling. You should never be unwilling.
That's
right?
it. That's it.
Because unwillingness to witness the truth of your performance is an acceptance of your delusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Legit.
Because yeah. All right. Next week, how to use tape. Let's go. We'll see you guys next week.
We're gonna do it. All right.